Hello and welcome to this afternoon's In Conversation. It is a huge privilege to be able to listen to Kim Blake this afternoon in conversation with Chloe Beeney, fashion stylist. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask during the In Conversation between Kim and Chloe, you can use the chat boxes at the edge of your screen to ask those questions. And then at the end of today's session with Chloe and with Kim, we'll be able to pick up those messages and to ask your questions of Chloe. Thank you. Kim and Chloe, over to you.
Thank you, Jill. So welcome everyone. I'm delighted that Chloe has taken the time to chat with me today, or chat with us today. I first met Chloe probably about 30 years ago. It's a long time ago. And Chloe was working with
several decades.
Several decades sounds better. Yes, absolutely. And Chloe was working at Condé Nast at the time, and I think you were in the cupboard at Condé Nast. Were you in the cupboard, or?
Yeah.
Right. So we would have met. I think it was a press day. It was a
yes,
press
day
definitely
100%
for bridal.
Yeah,
it was a bridal press day. So to start off, you know, a lot of people are like, what is a stylist? What does a stylist do? What the hell is a stylist? And I know that you will be coming along to explain that in greater depth later on in term. But can I just ask you, first of all, about your career path? Did you train in fashion? Did you wake up and think, gosh, yeah, that's my mission in life, I'm going to be in fashion?
It's funny, the answer is absolutely no, but all of the hallmarks were there. By age 8, for example, I was sewing all of my Halloween costumes myself because my mother didn't want to do them anymore. And probably by 12, I was dissecting, both in England, a magazine called Just 17, and in America, 17 magazine, neither of which exist any longer. And going through the fashion shoots, and I was, you know, voraciously reading them like crazy. So although I didn't understand that a stylist existed, and I didn't have that light bulb moment until probably my mid-20s, probably when I was in university like you guys are now, that someone actually was making all these pictures that I had been voraciously absorbing for, at that point, at least almost 8, 9, 10 years. I didn't realize that there was someone making them. I was looking at it as a finished product, and all of a sudden it was like, bing. So there were definitely hallmarks there that this was probably a direction I was going to go in, but hindsight is 20/20. So if you sort of took all those little disparaging little bits here and there, it wouldn't have amounted to everything. But looking back, it's like, well, of course I was going to be a stylist.
And did you study fashion?
I did not. I ended up here from California to London, and going to University College London, and I studied clinical psychology at UCL, which is one could argue a very good training for being a stylist in all sorts of ways, but it also kind of gives you an idea into the zeitgeist and psyche, and, you know, putting yourself in other people's shoes, which is essentially in many ways what styling is.
So do you mind taking us along? You know, what was your first job? Did you intern? Did you?
I was incredibly lucky, or crazy, not sure which. I never interned on a magazine. I interned at MTV. I worked on a live music program on what was at the time MTV Europe. So it went out across all of Europe, not just individual countries. So we had like 4 or 5 million people tuning into our live television program 4 nights a week. And that's where I interned for about 6 months. And I kind of went, no, I don't want to do television. I did enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but I knew I didn't want to be doing it for a long time. And then I worked for a hair and makeup and styling agent. And that's kind of when it really solidified to me that I wanted to be a stylist. and because I was at the hair and makeup agency, I did end up meeting people, and you never know where our opportunity is going to strike. And I struck up a conversation with the fashion director of Brides over the course of a couple of years. And, you know, she was obviously booking hair and makeup through our agency. She was also American. She was working at Condé Nast. And her assistant got up and left. And so there was a job vacancy that I was aware of. And so I applied. And, you know, people were not interning on magazines at that point in the way that they are necessarily now. Or if they did, they only ever wanted to intern on Vogue.
Yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
you know, it was between me and another fashion assistant who was already at Condé Nast. And due to various reasons and luck, I got the job. And so I went straight into a full-time fashion assistant's job in a magazine without a day's work experience as an intern, which is, I think there's only one other person that I know of in the Condé Nast universe in Europe that did that.
Right.
So as I say, you never know where some lightning's going to strike, and you just got to go with it when it rolls. You got to roll with it.
So at Brides, that must have been pretty good grounding for big frocks.
It was incredibly good grounding for big frocks. But also it was out of the limelight. Most people, you know, there's a very steady group of women coming in all the time getting married. It was still very quite traditional. So I got to learn the machinations of doing shoots without all the high gloss and the drama and the politics of main fashion. So I got to really concentrate on all the different things that a fashion assistant needs to do. It was a really small department, so you were, you know, hands down on the floor in like mountains of tulle and ironing and steam. Well, you don't steam, never steam a wedding dress. Anyone, if you're getting married, don't let anyone steam your wedding dress. Water and white does not work.
Yeah.
Not, you know, just there you go. And so, you know, I got to do a lot of things that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have had hands-on experience. And also within 6 months, I was doing my own shoots. So, you know, this was something that most people didn't get that opportunity. And as it turns out, as my career has progressed over time, I've ended up doing a lot of red carpet and celebrity and the Oscars and the Emmys. And so if you know your way around a couture dress, which, you know, I had my 4 years of informal training was all about couture techniques. And even if you were working on Vogue, you didn't get that. You got a little bit of denim and a little bit of this under 500 quid and a little bit of, you know, they had a lot more variation in what they were styling. But, you know, there were not that many fashion assistants that you could take to a shoot in Paris to do couture because they didn't know what they were doing. And it's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, what else? You know, so a $40,000 to a $60,000 gown. Oh, yeah, no problem.
So you obviously then had, as you say, you had your own shoots at that point. Did that mean that you were working at the lower end of the market? Did they give you the dresses under $300 or the dresses under £300?
Yes. So I was partially due to the fact that my boss very much disliked that story, and also it was very incredibly generous of her to give that to me. So, you know, it was a baptism of fire. I was given the basically dresses for under 500 quid, which would be to this day probably dresses wedding dresses you could get for under $750 or $1,000 or 750 pounds. They were very flammable. They were not of the best quality materials, we'll say. That's putting generously. You didn't want to come anywhere near them with an open flame. That would have been a very large hazard. And basically, you know, the reason she didn't like doing the shoot was you had to try and make a silk purse out of a sow's ear for people on a budget. And, you know, if there's nothing else, you know, being restricted is the mother of all invention. You had to make stuff that was intrinsically not very nice to look at look good and desirable to make other people depart with their cash to buy that dress.
Well, Chloe, I have actually worked with you on several shoots where when I've had a budget, you are my go-to stylist that I always bring on board, because I've actually watched you turn a garment, let's just call it a garment, some kind of nasty synthetic garment, but I've watched you turn that into a dress of dreams. So that to me is what a stylist does, and that's why I want you to tell. Actually, I'm talking too much now. You worked with Isabella Blow. Can you tell us a little bit about working with Izzy?
Yeah, no, I having put 4 years at the coalface in bridal. Condé Nast was very much a very small family at that point. It hadn't, it's much more egalitarian now, and it's certainly making strides to be so. But at that time, it certainly was everything but. And I had applied for a job on Russian Vogue to get myself out of bridal, basically. At which point I described myself as having snow blindness. And having only ever worked in white for 4 years, you're just kind of like, and I didn't get the job at Russian Vogue because they were looking for a Russian speaker in Moscow. And I was willing to move to Moscow to do anything to move forward. But as it turns out, a year and a half later, they had to move all of their production back to London anyway. But in the meantime, a very wonderful woman who sadly departed us this year, actually, or end of last year, by the name of Anna Harvey, who launched the careers of a lot of people, basically liked my chutzpah. And the contributing fashion editor at the London Sunday Times Style, where Isabella was the fashion director, came over and had gotten the job as fashion director of Russian Vogue, as it happened. She was Italian. She's now, funnily enough, the fashion director of China Vogue, is Daniela Padici, and she's very, very good. So anyway, she came over to do Russian Vogue, but Izzy would only let her go in Izzy-esque way if she replaced herself. So Anna and Daniela had a conversation, and they went, well, you know what, there's only one person that could do this and also take a 50% pay cut. So they knew I was desperate enough to do it. And I literally went to go and have a 20-minute interview with Isabella Blow. It lasted 3.5 hours, and I started a week later.
Was she on Tatler at the time, or was
No, this was long before this. She was the fashion director of the London Sunday Times newspapers, the Sunday Times Style Supplement.
Okay.
And I ended up I was at Brides for 4 years, and then I was 4 years at the Sunday Times under 2 different fashion directors, and at that point actually, I was there for 6 years in total under 3 different editor-in-chiefs and 2 fashion directors, and a period where there was no fashion director at all.
And do you have any, because, Izzy was an enigma.
Yes.
And, have you got any wonderful stories that you can tell us about working with her, or some...
Izzy was one of these people that... It's very hard to describe, because she was very good at mixing people together. Literally picking people out of left field, right field, and going, you guys need to have a conversation, or you guys need to find a way of working together. And it was one of her very underrated, I think, talents that no one ever really espouses, because she was so good at meeting people. She was very gregarious when she was up. I think it's very much a matter of public record. She was a manic depressive. And I was very lucky. I worked with her when she was in a very up space. And during those spaces, she was really good, introducing people to each other, really championing young people that were just trying to get their foot in the door in this industry. And very much young designers too, from Lee McQueen or Philip Tracy or Jeremy Scott, And, so she was very good at putting people together and putting people together. And I think it's one of those things that people don't realize enough, that was one of her special sauces.
Yeah.
But she definitely had Izzyisms. And one of my, she was known for all sorts of things. She was constantly chain smoking. She always wore the specific perfume that another fashion assistant who, when she had gone to Tadler, who I'm friends with, who's now a yoga teacher, we both kind of went together to one of the exhibitions here of all of her own clothes. And we both walked in and we were like, it was the smell of her perfume, which they had gone and put into the air in the museum, that killed us both. It wasn't the clothes, because they'd all been dry cleaned and sanitized and didn't have burn marks through them. But what got us was the smell of her perfume everywhere. But she used to, one of the things she always used to say, you can have the most talented 6-7 people on a shoot, and it doesn't mean it's always going to rise.
Yeah.
It depends on how collectively everyone's working as a team.
Yeah.
If anyone tries to kind of be better than anybody else, the shoot never kind of takes off.
Yeah. Do your job. Now, did you get to travel much when you were with the Sunday Times?
I traveled extensively, but that's partially due to the fact that Isabella hated to travel. She was terrified of airplanes. In the whole time I was there, I mean, she would take the train to Paris. She would shoot in Paris. But I only saw her on a plane once, and that is in the very first week of, literally, actually the second week of working for her. We went out to Los Angeles, and we did a shoot with David LaChapelle, and people like Paris Hilton were in it, and ambulance drivers, and all sorts of things. Typical. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. I have to answer my door because I'm doing a shoot on Monday, and they're supposed to be delivering everything tomorrow, and I can guarantee that doorbell is something arriving today. 2 seconds.
Don't get that. So just to a little bit of background, I know for sure, I'd like Chloe's going to tell us, or I'll ask her to tell us. She was in Hawaii, got back from a shoot in Hawaii, was asked in 24 hours to go back to Hawaii. So she was in Hawaii twice in a week.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just telling the story of how you had to go to Hawaii twice in a week.
Yes, that is absolutely true. But, as I said, I was able to travel. I was in, Sunday Times was a small team there too. And Isabella would commission what she wanted to commission. And as long as you could bring it in on budget. Now, I didn't mind jumping on a plane at a moment's notice, and frequently did, if it meant getting the right picture. And so I flew out to Hawaii to do a shoot, and while there, I then came back. It took me about 72 hours to get there. I was on the ground it took me 2 days to get there. I was on the ground for 3 days doing the shoot. Everything's fine. I pack everything up and I fly. It takes me 2 days back from Hawaii to LA to London. I get back and the photographer calls me going, I got an advertising job. Do you want to come back? And the holy grail for almost all stylists is an advertising job, because it means that you will actually be able to eat for the next couple of weeks. So of course my answer was, yes, of course I will. So I literally unpacked the suitcase, called in a whole bunch more clothes, put together another editorial story, got myself on a plane, went back, we shot the commercial job, and then I added in another fashion shoot while there, totally different concept with totally different clothes, and then flew back again.
And you do have to turn on a sixpence, don't you? Because I mean, I've been with you at your house for dinner, and you've had a call in from New York, and you have been on a flight within 12 hours.
Yeah, this is a job that is very much for someone that doesn't mind chaos, and that you will miss a lot of things, but you just have to be able to say yes to most opportunities. Like I'm doing this is the jewelry, which is starting to arrive for a shoot that I've got, a menswear shoot on Monday. This was all supposed to be shooting in a month's time, but everyone brought it forward. And I literally found out less than 48 hours ago that I'm now shooting it on Monday. It's a menswear cover for L'Officiale Italy, with quite a big piece of talent, and no one knew whether or not we were going to get re-locked down and in what way. So everyone's like, well, we don't want to push it another month. So, I will be sitting in tomorrow while McQueen, D Squared, Stella McCartney, Vuitton, Valentino, who else am I still waiting on? J.W. Anderson, Craig Green, and I don't do menswear very often, which is going to be fun. I'm very much looking forward to it. And, you know, also—
Are you allowed to tell us who the talent is, or do you have to be—
I'm being discreet on this one.
Okay.
Until
That's fine.
discretion is the best part of valor in these things, because I have been in Milan on more than one occasion where I have confirmed a model come celebrity, everything's all signed, blood has been written on contracts, and they still don't show up.
I think I know exactly who you mean.
Yes, you might do. And so until it's in the bag, and also these days you have to be very careful, because I'm doing on behalf of a magazine, but if you put it out in a public sphere, you're not going to get booked again. So I'll take backstage shots while we're doing it that are generic enough, because you want to tease people that you're doing this shoot, but until the magazine has published it,
yeah,
can't really do too much backstage stuff, because you're then giving away what the story's going to be or who the story is with.
So have you been on any shoots where you kind of have to pinch yourself and say, gosh, I'm really here? It's just me and this person, and we're making it work.
I mean, probably, and it won't mean much to everyone, but there was a moment that I had that I was shooting early on for the Wall Street Journal WSJ magazine. And this is before his fall from grace, and he was the biggest thing in sliced bread at the time. And he's still a very, very good photographer. So this is not disparaging to him at all. I was in Paris. I'd been taken over there by the WSJ, and I was doing a portrait sitting, and it wasn't even main fashion, with the CEO and board of directors chairman, Bernard Arnault of LVMH, and Mario Testino, and myself. And Bernard Arnault has a wonderful grand piano in a kind of subset of his office. His wife is actually a concert pianist. And Mario starts getting him to play on the piano, and he can play beautifully. And I'm sitting in there going, it's me, Testino, and Arnault, the biggest luxury goods chairman in the world. And, you know, I've been very lucky. There are many, many, many moments where you pinch yourself, but that one was just really strangely, they're surreal. Like, I mean, as I say, the first week shooting with Isabella, I'm sitting with David LaChapelle, a very young Paris Hilton, a exceptionally sort of large, and I'm saying about 400 to 500 pound ambulance driver at the Playboy Mansion in the Bunny Grotto. And, you know, you're sitting there kind of going, this couldn't be more surreal if, you know, I was in Disneyland. And I've done, you know, like that. I've done shoots at Disneyland while the park is closed. So, you know, but then I've been to Bora Bora. There are so many moments that I wouldn't give up for anything, because this career has allowed me to have. Well, you know, it's just keeping your eyes open and kind of going, oh my God, this is happening. Okay, I'm doing my job, but oh my God, this is cool.
And you got to drive across the US in a camper van, was it?
I have gone from Malibu, the pier at Malibu, all the way to the lighthouse at Montauk, shooting people all across America over the course of about 2.5 weeks. It was exhausting. It was probably the most painful shoot I've ever had to do, because the photographer was from Uruguay. He had an assistant and me, so there was just the three of us. We'd shoot all day and then drive for about 4 or 5 hours on the 10 freeway to the next location. So, you know, we went from the Grand Canyon and then down to Phoenix, and Phoenix all the way over to Houston. We didn't manage to get up to Austin, and slowly, and then Louisiana, and made our way across America, then up through New York. I illegally drove through the tunnel in New York from New Jersey in said camper van, not realizing, because I had propane tanks on board. Oops. Which I could have blown up the whole Lincoln Tunnel. That would have, I think it's the Lincoln Tunnel. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Whichever the one from New Jersey into New York is versus Queens into New York. But anyway, I got away with it. So yeah, you never know what this world is going to spin at you.
Now, you've worked with the Met in New York and the V&A. What did you do with the Met?
The Met, back every year, as everyone knows, the Met does the costume gala, and that's basically to raise funds for the exhibition that they're doing. And one year they were doing something called Extreme Beauty, and it was very much extreme silhouettes in fashion. And I was very lucky that I basically put some notes and begs into the press office at the Met saying, I would really, really, really like to shoot this collection for the exhibition. And sure enough, they went, "Ooh, London Sunday Times with a global reach. Yes, we'll let you do it." So basically only American Vogue, which obviously Anna was the chairwoman of it. So of course American Vogue was shooting it. So American Vogue got it for all of America, and I got to shoot it for all of the rest of the world. And, you know, we're in a studio and these big, huge wooden crates come in and you have to have white gloves on. And so I've been very lucky to work with both the Met and
the V&A.
Yeah, and the V&A. Yeah.
Now one of my,
that happened. Sorry, that's
all right. If you need to take it.
No. I can hold these back. Fine. Yeah, so none of those are here, but all the jewelers have called.
Didn't you do a jewelry shoot that you had armed security guards? Was that in Milan, or was that?
That was in Milan. That was part of the same shoot that somebody didn't show up with.
Oh, now I now know exactly who you're talking about. I do.
Yeah. And it was about $4.6 million worth of jewelry. And when I say $4.6 million, that was one single piece of jewelry. One. Not like, oh, they brought tons of stuff and it all added up to 4.6 million. No, it was just 4.6 million for one single piece, which is most of the time sat in its archives. And yeah, I was doing English supermodels and jewelry.
Fantastic. Now, I do have one favorite story, which I'm going to ask you to tell us about the shoot that you did for Armani, or for the Sunday Times Style with
the Armani shoot actually was for Australian Harper's Bazaar.
Okay.
We did shoot it in London, which was great. It was easy. And we did the shoot and it's lovely. And we had these big sort of collages of paper, and the photographer ironically, the photographer I'm shooting with on Monday was the photographer that shot it. So we've worked together quite a long time. And anyway, so it goes down to Australia, and it was in aid of Armani was opening his first store in Sydney, because Australia at that point, very much for high fashion or luxury fashion, was a bit of a backwater because they're on a different set of seasons than us. You know, when it's our winter, it's their summer, so it's very hard to kind of get collections to go back and forth. And the shoot comes out, and I don't think of anything of it because most of the time I don't, you know, this is on the cusp of social media, but you don't get the immediacy from doing a shoot around the world knowing it's out. You still had to wait a couple of weeks for the magazines to be sent to you in the post. So I didn't really know it was out, but obviously it got there. The magazines got to Italy, or the Australian publicist faxed them to Italy, and I was on the number 73 bus. Which I will always remember because it doesn't have the same route anymore, but it used to go all the way down Oxford Street. And I was in front of Selfridges, the department store. And, you know, stylists get this great experience, but, you know, which I wouldn't trade for all the tea in China, but it's not exactly the best well-paying gig. So I'm taking the bus down Oxford Street because, you know, that's what I did. And I'm sitting there, and it's early mobile phone starts ringing, and it's a random Italian number. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just pick it up. Hello, is this Chloe Beeney? Yes. I have Mr. Armani on the phone. He would like to thank you for the shoot. And I'm like, oh, and I'm just sitting there going, I've got Armani calling me to thank me for the shoot that I did, that he was happy enough about, while I'm sitting on the number 73 bus. You know, the complete dichotomy of the head of one of the luxury goods designers of all time is calling little old me the stylist while I'm, barely able to put food on the table while taking a bus down Oxford Street. It was the sublime and the ridiculous all in one go.
So Chloe, I know we would love to. You're doing a lot more celebrity styling now. So I'm going to ask us to take you through your Instagram, or should we go through your website or anything? I'm going to just ask you one question before we go into you taking us through that, and then some Q&A. What advice would you give to any students that think that they may want to go into styling today? Because as we say, the industry as we know it has changed and is constantly changing now. We've got to be able to turn on a sixpence and pivot into whichever direction it is going to go into. Sorry to throw this at you, but is there anything that you think that you might be able to tell students that they could follow?
I think this is true for anything in life. If at all possible, say yes. You never know what the world is going to throw at you. And I think that's true of any job or anything. Be passionate about what you want. And you make your own opportunities, but also keep your eyes out for opportunities and things that you don't think might be the right thing. You never know what they're going to lead to or who that you're going to meet because of them. The industry has, like with anything in the world right now, COVID will have upended everything. Will luxury look the same as it did a year ago? Never again. Will people consume as much? I really hope not. Me personally, I think we were getting to the point where we were producing a juggernaut of stuff that people didn't necessarily need, and you had luxury goods people, companies destroying things if they didn't sell so that it didn't water down their brand. Well, you're like, you shouldn't be producing that much anyway. So there's all sorts of things that are going to change. And there's a huge responsibility now that I think is, I hope, will come out of this. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for younger people because it will be remade in other people's eyes. I put myself in a place where I'm 1 foot in old school and 1 foot in new school. I think it really will be the death knell of a lot of things like the old superstar creative directors, because no one buys into that as much anymore. And you're seeing it in share prices going down. You can't go and say something's luxury when it's a whole bunch of cheap nylon that's not recyclable, and supply chains will have to become more transparent. But swinging back to you guys, keep your eyes open. You just never know who you're going to meet. You never know there's no such thing as a predetermined path, and I'm definitely that case.
Thank you. And you have very kindly used some of our Regent students before to assist you. We would love to stay in touch about that. Please always let us know if you're looking for people to help out, empty the bins, hang things up, book it in, book it out. We have someone that can help you out there. So Chloe,
that is half the thing,
Absolutely.
Smile goes a long way, even now.
Well, the last one that worked with you, she came to you for a morning, wasn't it? And she ended up working with you for nearly a week.
Yes, that should happen. And it also happened right as lockdown happened.
Yeah, that's right.
And she wasn't sure if she was going to be staying, whether she was going to be going. We were trying to get, she was welcome to stay at my house. If she wasn't going to go back, she was in dorms at Regent's, so all sorts of things were going on. And this was literally in March. What we were looking at, the shoot was the 15th of March, and the country shut down on the 20th.
Yeah, it was the last week because
we were doing returns. I was running around. She was packing up. I was literally getting in my car, so I didn't go on public transport to get all the stuff out and returned before everyone started working from home. It was brilliant, but it was also chaotic. And I will say she was an amazing hustler.
She was fantastic. I mean, she was not going to let me go. She was. I said, you know, she knew she wanted that job. So,
oh yeah, and she was bloody good at it.
Good. Okay, now can I ask you to take us through whether it's your website or the Instagram, and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to recently, please.
Okay, well, I mean, it's an interesting one because, as I just said, we've all kind of been on lockdown. So I probably had the busiest couple of weeks in end of February, early March. And I was doing editorials. I was doing red carpet dressing. It was the we had the BAFTAs. I have one of my regular clients. I had an editorial to do, and you know, there's no way I would have gotten through those 10 days, 2 weeks without extra pairs of hands on board. And then, bam, we shut.
And
country shut, the world shut, everything.
Sorry, your screen is live, so I think you can.
Yeah.
Show us what you've been up to, I believe.
Well, so, I mean, you know, we all have moved instead of having well, we do, I still have an old fashioned tear sheets portfolio, which is very last millennia. But obviously now everyone uses, the first thing person does is if they're looking to book you is they look at your Insta. And so, you know, here I literally this cover of Entertainment Weekly, I shot on the Sunday of lockdown. So that was the 19th of March. I can literally remember it like this. And the following day, everything shut. So I was doing Robert Pattinson for Entertainment Weekly, which came out for Tenant, which was at the time going to come out for 4th of July. I did actually get to see Tenant here in London in the movie theater in the brief window when it was open. So I'm glad I got to see the film. I was doing this shoot with Anya the week before. That came out and was ended up in both Jalouse and L'Official. And obviously Anya is the face of Victor Rolf's Flower Bomb, but she's also in the New Mutants, which is with Maisie Williams coming out soon. And
wasn't that Emma as well? Was she the new Emma? The Jane Austen?
She was, yes. So she was in Emma. Yeah,
because that was literally coming out at the same time.
Coming out at the same time. So I've been very lucky. All of these pieces of editorial have come out while I've been in lockdown. I had one of my commercial clients I shot just before lockdown, and she was my first shoot that I did a week ago, post lockdown.
Right.
So, you know, I've done 6 months of not much at all.
So the reason that she is wearing Victor and Rolf, of course, then on the cover,
yes,
is because she's the face of Flower Bomb.
Correct.
And there is a flower.
A very, very expensive jeweled flower. So if that, you know, it all worked for the full, you know, bringing it full circle with Flower Bomb, you might as well put a $250,000 jeweled flowered brooch on her neck. It wouldn't have been my first choice of Victor and Rolf outfit, but it was also the same week as, or just before, it must have been end of January, because it was just after Couture and I couldn't get the Victor and Rolf dressed as I wanted because they were in the middle of Couture madness with all of their clients coming in to do their ordering. Or, you know, like December, I don't know if I can open that up, but any of you guys at home happen to be on my Insta, that's Amelia Clark for the British Fashion Awards. No, that was BAFTAs. The black dress was BAFTAs. And I work with a lovely stylist in Los Angeles. And Amelia is her client, but I basically help out where I can for any of the London legs of things. And funnily enough, that same stylist is Claire Danes' stylist in LA. And this was for Homeland. And weirdly enough, the actress that played against Claire Danes in Homeland, Andrea Deck, came to me. So it was funny. They all showed up at their own premiere. And it was a 1-2 punch from me and Petra, which was wonderful. Here was Amelia at the British Fashion Awards. And then like the Malone Soulier campaigns. You know, I'm slowly rebuilding websites. So, you know, most people on here will not be footballer, but this is Sergio Aguero, who's a very famous, very well-paid Argentinian footballer. And And yeah, so I mean, this was the year of the Oscars for the Favorite, which did win almost everything. And Cece here was the actual producer. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't have had any money, and the film would never have been made. And she and the director were hand in hand, and they won everything.
Now that's interesting, because she doesn't look like a size 0.
She is not a size 0. She is a size 18. And not everyone in red carpet dressing is a size 0, or even a size 4 or a size 8.
Right.
This pink kimono was a runway piece from Gucci. They only made 6 of them, and they were going to be unisex, men's or women's. Thank you, Gucci. And so it fits. So I had them, 4 of them had already been pre-bought by customers, and I had to negotiate with the Gucci press office to hold off delivery to their customers of their pink kimonos until after the Sunday night at the Oscars, so that at least she was the first person to wear it in public.
Fantastic.
Which annoys me, because you don't actually get a really good view of the amazing. This pink kimono was phenomenal. And then she's got her hands in her pockets. You can't control people on the red carpet.
You absolutely can't.
Yeah, so, random shoots that I do. I still love this shot. And that's obviously Richard Quinn. And this is backstage at actually a different university's graduate show, or DJ Black Coffee for Esquire, or I'm sure some of the guys in the audience will know this is Diplo. So, you're always doing different things. You're always being challenged. And part of the love that I've got for it is the fact that it's never, ever, ever the same. No job is the same. Everything you do, all the players, all the clothes, again, it comes back to someone that can handle change, is spontaneous. It hits all my buttons, because I would make a really lousy accountant.
So I'm happy to open up to any questions now. Does anyone? Oh, sorry, didn't realize there was some more. Carry on.
Everyone at home can see this at their leisure anyway.
No, this is really good. I'm loving the green.
Like, this is Denai Guerrero, which I was helping out someone, again, one of the LA crew, for Black Panther. So you just never know what's gonna, or Cindy Crawford, or, as I say, they can take a look at it at their leisure.
Okay. So do we have any questions that we can open up to? So no, we don't have any questions from what I can see. Jill has questions.
Yes, I do. I know that photography has been really important during lockdown, and I'm just wondering what impact that's had on styling. And also, I guess that's my first question. My second question is about 2D has become much more important in recent years, as we've made greater and greater use of technology. And I'm just wondering also what impact that has had on styling. So in some ways, how has styling changed? Maybe over the last 10 years? It would be great to hear that, Chloe.
I think it's been a little bit of, in some ways, cutting off your nose to spite your face, because as magazines have had less and less power, and there's been a lot more direct to consumer by the brands, they've cut out the middleman, let's call that the magazines, because they want their brand message to be unfiltered directly to the consumer. But the problem is that they rely on stylists and photographers and magazines to be creative, to inspire them for their collections. So it's a very yin-yang thing. And if you cut it down the middle and take one whole side away, it becomes less creative and more homogeneous. I think there's a little less variation that we're seeing. And there's also, because brands have then tried to stranglehold the message to try and drive sales in such a way, that they then dictate to the magazines, whereas there used to be a lot more editorial freedom to create wonderful images. And if you create wonderful images, it creates desire in the viewer and the consumer to go out to that brand because they see themselves in it. If they're only seeing one monolith of an idea from the brand itself, it somewhat alienates a lot of their consumer base. And I think some of them are waking up to that. There was a case maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's slowly undoing that knot, where the brand would literally say, yes, we will send you a look, but you have to sign an affidavit saying that you will shoot the whole look head to toe like you were looking at it in a catalog. And you couldn't put any other brands with it. You couldn't mix and match. You couldn't do anything. And basically only Vogue and a few people could go, no, we're not doing that. If you don't want to let it in, fine. And they kind of went, oh, but we want to be in this magazine or that magazine. And now they want more to know who the brand adjacencies are. So as long as they know that that brand is going to be in with people they see as their peers, then they're okay with it. And they're getting a little better at mixing and matching because they realize that it's hindered them rather than helped them, this very much tight grasp on brand message. And it has allowed a lot of younger designers to slowly percolate back in. You know, if you think about it, you don't have a huge amount of designers that are coming through. Like Erdem is huge now, but you know, he probably wouldn't have come through in the same way because he came through 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of the young designers are getting like yes, it's a great new designer, but then they can't get any press outside of the odd press piece. They can't be in any photo shoots because, you know, I've had this with magazines where they literally send me a list going, these are the advertisers and these are the only people you can use. And now people are kind of going, okay, it's an 8-page story. Here are our advertisers list. We need 7 pages of at least advertisers, but yes, you can throw a curveball in there.
Right.
As long as a curveball, whether it's a young designer, fits within the story and it becomes organic, then the brands don't seem to mind. And it's a huge lift to those young designers who really very much need it for getting, you know, funding and stockists and everything else. If they don't get the press pages and the tear sheets, there's, you know, they sink.
And Julia Robson has asked a question. She said she loves your story about the number 73, but her question is, are you finding in a hyper-connected world that you can still reach the celebrities and designers? And how much do the heads of companies still have to do with the creative process? And who have you worked with where you can really see the genius? And do you have a favorite amongst those? And if so, why?
Oh, now there's a 1-2 punch, Julia.
Yeah, but say no, Julia. How are you, Chloe?
There are a lot of geniuses out there, and I think it's how do you see genius and where and when. You know, there are times and places where Gucci is the best thing that you've ever seen because it fits within the story and it's on the zeitgeist. But that's not to say that in the same breath, Paul Costello, not my favorite thing in the world, but it's got its own market and its own consumer, and it's right in their universe. If there's one thing about a hyper-connected world, is that you notice that there are so many different competing universes all at the same time. It's like looking up into the sky. There are thousands of stars, and there can be all sorts of things going on, and they're all relevant. It's all at your point of view at the time. So that leads me on to a very diplomatic way of getting out of the fact that I'm not going to say what my favorite is.
Which actually leads into another question from Julia, and saying, on a personal level, do you have a personal style, do you think? She says, I know you're required to recreate recreate the brand character of hundreds of brands, but is there a Chloe signature? Where does this come from?
This is an interesting, it's a very good question. And I've had it leveled at me several times. I do not have a personal style. I am a magpie. Now, there are some very good, amazing stylists out there that have a laser focused point of view. I think of Leith Clark. I think of Sophia Nettenfitu. I think of Lucinda Chambers. There are so many people that have a laser focused single point of view, but I look at all their shoots and they're all the same. For better or for worse, and I'm not saying that there's that I'm right and they're wrong, because that's definitely not the case. But I like to think that myself, and I'm going to say this from a woman's point of view, that women wake up and one day we're dominatrix, and next day we wake up and we're a bit hippie, and the next day we wake up and just go, I wish I could stay in my pajamas. And or one day I wake up and I'm Sporty Spice. And I try and honor all those different facets of who I am. And funnily enough, this was brought home to me literally 72 hours ago, because I was walking up the street near my house and I ran into a neighbor of mine, and I had my mask on and I had a hat on and I waved to them, and I had to get to about this close, and then she went, oh, I didn't realize it was you. Oh, you're totally dressed differently today. And it's like, I know when you're in your sports gear because you're out running, or you're out doing this, or you're out doing that. And I think, you know, one minute I'll be dressed up in uber glam and cocktail party, and the next day, as I say, I'm in, you know, cashmere trackies. So I don't have a signature style, and I have gone up for interviews at very, very, very big magazines, and they looked through my book and went, I don't know who you are. And I've been insulted by that, because I'm like going, then you don't know who your reader is, because your reader isn't one person.
Yeah.
But again, everyone's got a different point of view, and I'm not saying that mine's more valid than the next, but that's my code and that's how I live by. So maybe on my deathbed I'll know the answer.
And going back, my question is, are shoots changing? I mean, it's not my favorite thing. I don't actually like being on a shoot, as you know, having been on several with me. But it was also the fact that there were 27, sometimes 30 people on a shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that going to work now?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Well, this is one of the great silver linings of COVID. I love it. My shoot on Monday is going to have a photographer, an assistant, talent, me, and the groomer. Right. Maximum of 5 people, because it has to stay under 6.
Oh, right, of course, of course.
So at worst, you either have one hair and one makeup, or you have one person that does both and like an art director. So your teams have to be 6.
Right.
Which means you can't have 8 million people putting in their 10 cents all the time, for better or for worse, so people can actually be creative. And they have to go back to trusting the talent that they have booked.
Right.
One of the things that I think digital photography brought in, and there are a lot of advantageous things about digital photography versus old-fashioned film, but I came up at the tail end of old-fashioned film, and you had to trust your photographer that he could focus his camera and get the picture on 6 rolls of film, because you couldn't digitally manipulate it.
Yeah.
Airbrush it away. You couldn't Photoshop it out. You couldn't put a different head on a different body. So you had to trust the team that you put together. And I think one of the things that digital brought in, you brought 27 different other people to the table, and that trust with the core team got eroded, because you'd have the ad company in, and his great aunt Mildred, and the coffee lady, everyone and his uncle putting in their 10 cents, and undermining the vision that was in the storyboard that had been pitched.
Yeah.
And you didn't trust the team. And so I think one of the things of the silver linings of COVID is people are, yes, they're having to mask up and not be near people, but it's small teams again, so they can play. And some of the best work comes out of that sense of play.
I think it's actually a very exciting time, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, thrilling. It's
It
weird
is.
that everyone's very cautious, but
Yeah.
it will also be a time that will sink or swim for a lot of people, because there will be a lot of photographers that constantly need that reinforcement all the time, and they won't be able to do, they can't have 15 Digitex on site doing everything. So they got to know their SH1.
But the industry needs that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've felt for a while that it was.
There's a lot of people that have gone out there and called themselves stylists, whether they actually were or not, because the definition of a stylist is changed. Like, I am an editorial and fashion stylist, but you get music video stylists, and you get TV commercial stylists,
yeah.
and you get costume departments on movies, and they're all a version of the same thing, but the worlds barely ever collide.
Yeah. Chloe, I can see that the clock is against us, so I just want to say a huge thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. We look forward to welcoming you back to Regent's.
I look forward to meeting everyone at Regent's.
Either physical or digital, or a new word, which is phygital, which is
Digital,
kind of
which just makes it sounds like they've got OCD. I mean, not ADHD.
Thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it.
No problem. Guys, have a great term.
That's great. Thank you, Chloe.